Hello, everyone. We are Plan to Sew, So Do It. My name is Ruke.
My name is Michelle.
I'm Angelina.
And we are the developers of Plan to Sew. In this presentation, we're going to go through the problem, as well as the process we took to solve the problem, the results, and the lessons we learned throughout this past year. Above is a quote from our client, expressing her dissatisfaction to current applications that cater to people in the sewing and quilting community.
We were told to create an engaging and interactive system that managed sewing projects for both professional and at-home sewists, so that it was fun looking with lots of colors, but also very easy to use so that any age range can use. We integrate essential project management tools like timelines, deadlines, repos for photos and swatches, checklists for shopping materials, and other descriptive elements for each project. We used the book Plan to Quilt as inspiration for a lot of the website because our client had shown a lot of interest in it. So the things like the project management tools, a lot of them were taken from the book, and also the colors and how everything was displayed, we took a lot of inspiration from. We used Postgres as the back end and then React as a front end and connected the two through a Rails API. And then we used Render to deploy the site.
For Postgres, we maintain the database up to date using migrations. Every team member essentially had to run Rails DB migrate every time you created maybe a new entity of sorts. Rails API was responsible for each CRUD operation on projects or materials, etc. React is the front end, so we use this framework to actually design the web page, and we learned about different hooks like use state and use effect for efficient rendering of objects. Render was used as the deployment platform, so any live updates were first pushed to the main branch, after which Render would go through a script and compile everything and upload it onto the main website. So we followed extreme programming as an approach. We used incremental design specifically, which is essentially just you repeat a bunch of stages recurringly and every week. We divided it into 3 potential stages. So the very first stage was elicitation, and we do have a lot of advice with how to deal with a few problems that come across in this stage. Something we struggled with was our client was extremely technically knowledgeable, so we would always have clashes with maybe the tech stack or different methods of implementing. I will say that it's important to maintain the client and dev relationship. So definitely do your research and go into why a solution may be better than the rest, instead of just taking the client's 2 cents based on experience. The second thing we struggled with was actually establishing needs and features. So understanding the problem domain is extremely hard. Sometimes the client is kind of grappling with the features that they need. So in this case, I think it's very critical to discuss this with your team and have the client in conjunction, discuss it with them as well. The third issue that we had was actually scheduling, because this is a year-long project. It's important that everyone kind of makes time to meet. And a tool that we use was When to Meet, which essentially just outlines your daily schedule and picks a good time for everyone. Because it's a pretty big project, the scope is huge. So the way we divided it was based on stories. We divided it every week. So we have a meeting with our client and she would pick stories for us to work on, and we would kind of focus on getting that delivered until the next meeting. For the second stage, which is design and implementation, our best piece of advice would be definitely keep flexibility on the forefront always, because you want to avoid code duplication, and especially when it came to the binging or API calls, if we kind of duplicate that in every single file in the project, we'd have to change like the API URL. So just have like different layers, like an API architecture layer, to actually like maintain flexibility. Another thing is we also focus on dividing tasks up based on front end and back end because it can get extremely complicated if we have two people working on the same files. It can lead to a lot of weird conflicts. So focus on working on different files, and in the end, these two people can collaborate together to actually like help with functionality. And again, like we mentioned, this was a relatively new tech stack for everyone on the team. So always reference documentation. There's an abundance of tutorials online that you can just reference to actually like gain better knowledge on the tech stack. We also asked for help, like faculty. We went to our professors and asked for help with debugging. They always know a lot about the field, so like don't feel afraid to just ask a question. Finally, the third stage was testing. We used different testing methods. First one is Postman. If you guys have taken 280, you do know what that is. It's just like testing if the data that you get back is correct. I think it's a very useful tool to like make sure your backend works correctly and your API calls are working perfectly fine. We also use this thing called BDD, which is essentially like behavioral driven development. It's a way you can test like the behavior of the website. We can essentially just go through different scenarios and examples, like clicking on a project and just see if that kind of like returns like the data correctly. The third form of testing we did was actually testing the UI, and the way we tackled that was actually going through the website ourselves and seeing if it looked appealing to the eye. So our team members would go through like margin or padding and see if it looked fine. And we'd also obviously put this through the client themselves and verify that it worked.
Next, we will go through a quick demo of our site. As you can see, it was important that each user has their own login, because everybody has their own specific projects. It wouldn't make sense for you to be able to see someone else's projects. This is the detail page for the project. It's the card view of it. As you can see, this person has a lot of projects, and once you click into it, you can have specific information about the project. This is the view of the information that users will input themselves. There are many categories that, as we mentioned earlier, was inspired from the Plan to Sew book. Right here, we're kind of showing how you can upload swatches from your own device, which was pretty beneficial. Like if you're making a project, it's important to know what potential patterns you want to use. Next is your description of your project, as well as the deadline section. There is a process when it comes to things like sewing and quilting. So our client thought it was important to have that kind of labeled so that you can check it off along the way. Or even if you were commissioned for a project, you can kind of see, oh, how many days left do I have? Am I late? Am I on time? It just helps you to manage it smoother. Another thing is materials. The whole point of our app is that it's on your phone or on your computer. So if you're in the store and you are forgetting what you needed, you can always just pull up the app, click into your project, and see what materials you need or add materials that you didn't know you needed. And everything in our app is inline editable. That was very, very important from our client from like day one. So you can, a lot of the things you can just click on and edit it on spot. Next is another view of the projects. This is the list view versus the card view.
Continue playing it.
Versus the card view, this one shows like the timeline as well as the deadline. And actually beside each project, if you hover over these, it will tell you which specific project it's associated with. That was important to our client. And yeah, each project has its own like color. Next is our material list. So the difference is that before you only saw the specific materials for a project. This is kind of like a comprehensive view of all the materials you need. And again, you hover over this bar at the side, it'll tell you what project the material is associated with. And the chance that it's gray, it just means that this is a material that is not affiliated with any project. And again, everything is inline editable. And that is Plan to Sew.
With any project, there's always plenty of lessons to learn. And firstly, for us, we were all learning a new tech stack, as we saw earlier. The important thing to know when learning a new tech stack that you have to read through lots of documentation to gain a full understanding of what tools you need to implement, what features for your project. We did this by reading documentation, working on tutorials, and we were lucky enough to have a client that had a lot of domain knowledge, so we were able to ask our client for help and give us advice on certain ways to maybe implement a feature or not. Another lesson we learned was miscommunication and how to avoid miscommunication, especially with the client. With them not being here with us, we're always communicating with them during meetings, outside of meetings, and making sure that there's always a direct line of communication so we can avoid miscommunication, which can become a bottleneck for us in the future. For communication within the team, that's always very important because all of us are working on many different features within the project. That's full of different moving parts, so making sure to communicate with everybody is extremely important. Lesson we learned was with authentication is that some features will be more difficult than others, will need much more rigorous testing. Especially with a feature like this, communicating what does and what does not work is extremely important because with authentication, it can become a bottleneck for the application because you need to only be able to see your own projects and you don't want to see what everybody else is working on for their projects. We also learned that planning ahead is extremely important, and also planning ahead sets you up for success. For us, we started working on this project almost immediately after we were assigned it. Right afterwards, we try to meet with our client, do the elicitation, figure out what's needed. And this effectively set us up for success because we knew what we needed to do from the beginning. We were able to plan steps to bring us to our goals. And yeah, it makes it easy for us to know what we were building and what is needed in order to build our project. Another lesson we learned was when we were deploying our project, it's that pivoting is not bad. It's better than banging your head against the wall trying to solve an issue that, you know, can become a bottleneck. Whereas we were trying to deploy our project with this one company and it wasn't working. It was, for some odd reason, it just wouldn't work. So we pivoted to another company and it worked right away.
The end. Good luck with y'all's projects. We hope that this was informative and helpful.